to this first roundtable in a series of 3 on the topic of entrepreneurship, sustainability, and justice. And basically, in today's roundtable, we'll be focusing on the company side. And I've got the pleasure of working with my colleague Jorge Núñez from the law school. He'll introduce himself in a couple of minutes. Dr. Carney and Thierry Roussin, Maiden, Manzanal-Frank, the 3 practitioners working for the companies, basically running their own businesses. So I've got a great, well, I would hope so at least, crowd here together who can basically express their opinions, the practice side, with relation to this topic. So welcome, everybody. A little bit about the agenda. So we'll kick off with short introductions of who we are. So my name is Rita Klapper. I'm a reader at the interface of enterprise and sustainability at Manchester Metropolitan University. And basically I come from practice. I started in coal mining a long time ago and worked in different industries. And I've always been interested in sustainability, probably before I became interested in entrepreneurship, actually. And so that's a bit about me. And I have been organizing roundtables face-to-face and online for, I would say, more than 10 years, probably 15 years almost, in different countries, different places with different people. And it's always a pleasure to work with practice, bring practice also into the classroom, depending on where I am, and basically work with the people who are at the base. So basically, that was already me. Jorge is then going to say something in a few minutes. In terms of the Jorge is also going to talk about the order of the day. He's our legal specialist. Then we'll basically have Dr. Carney, who is the head of environment, social governance, and sustainability at Daisy Group, who has joined us for today. Thierry Roussin, who is the CEO from AguiaLabs in France, and Maiden Manzanal-Frank, who is the global sustainability consultant. Now, I've been basically working with all 3 of them for quite some time, different durations. But I've had really the pleasure of them contributing to different events that I've organized in different places. So it's fantastic that the 3 could make the time and the effort to be here today. And then we'll have Q&As, a summary of the discussion, and of course, a thank you and a little bit of a preview to the next 2 roundtables that will be happening later in May and in June. Okay, so I've done my introduction about myself already. Jorge, do you want to say a little bit about yourself and Juris laws?
Thank you very much, Rita. Well, people see my face now, but I'm one of many people representing Juris North. That's why the 2 logos. We are a discussion group. We started around 7 years ago, and right now we have 9 universities, mainly schools of law and political science in the UK. I'll mention them: Aberdeen, Durham, Hull, Liverpool. In Manchester, we have Manchester and Manchester Metropolitan, Newcastle, Surrey, and Westminster. In fact, one of my colleagues, she's here, Dr. Kayla Lord. She's in charge of the gender issues. One of the panels we'll have probably in the last roundtable in June. Hi, Kay. And again, we are many people. We are doing this in collaboration with ASAP at Yale University in America. ASAP means Academic Stand Against Poverty. And we are planning to be part of their conference in November at Yale. That will keep you informed about that. The second logo you see there, it's a charity I represent in Brazil, Fundação Angélica Goulart. It has to do with sustainability. We work with children and young adults in Brazil. Rita, that's about me. I'll explain now how we will proceed. Is that okay? Can we go to the next slide?
Yes.
The idea now, I'll explain very briefly how we do the things here in terms of the roundtables. the thing is we have a few experts, but we have a very, very friendly platform. We offer equal footing. What do we mean by that? After the introductions by each of our keynote speakers, the idea is to simply open up the mics and start talking to them. One thing I'm going to ask you all, if you can use at the bottom of your screen, you should see a chat box, simply to keep the order. Let me know when you have a question or when you have a comment, so I can keep track of the order. And then you simply may fire your question. Because we are recording, we assume we have the permission to later download the recording and share, because we share the resources for free on YouTube and Facebook. However, if you do have any problem with sharing your image or even your voice, please feel free to still write down the comment or question, and I'm more than happy, or Rita, but in principle it will be me, I'm more than happy to speak up and read the question or comment aloud for you. Let me see, anything else? The mic, again, it's fairly easy. It's the first icon at the bottom. Simply open the mic when Rita tells us we go to the questions and answers. And I think that's in terms of the procedure. Any other question or comment, please feel free to use the chat box, and I will be dealing with them one by one. And that's it. In terms of the disclaimer, although it's simply, I'm a lawyer here, so I'm wearing my legal hat. Rita and I own the video. It's simply to keep the things easier. If you do want to have access to the video, we are more than happy to share with you the video. We plan to download the video as well as the recording in terms of the voices and the chat box. So if you do want these resources, send an email to then Rita. Before we go, we'll put our email address. So please feel free to send an email, and we are more than happy to share with you these details. Am I forgetting anything, Rita?
No, that sounds quite good to me.
Perfect. And again, if any question, please use the chat box, and I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank
now
you.
Back to you, Rita.
Okay, thanks. So a warm welcome to Seb, to Thierry, and to Maiden. And so I'd like to basically give you the opportunity to just each of us to say who you are, what you do. So what is your profession? What's your business activity? Where you do it, with whom you do it, and actually what motivates you in doing this, what you're doing. So I was thinking, I mean, I don't mind who kicks it off. I'm going to monitor that basically nobody's talking more than a maximum of 10 minutes. Who wants to start? Does it matter to you? No? Then basically, Seb, do you want to kick off?
Sure, no problem. Okay, so hi everybody. Thanks for coming today, and thanks for inviting me. Who am I? I'm Seb Carney. I have worked in, I guess, forming socioeconomic strategies and doing such things quite often around environmental issues for the past 20 years. I have degrees in computing, master's degrees in technology management and law recently, as well as a PhD in energy and climate change. It's quite fortunate that my PhD was taken up and was utilized, and so that got me into various different countries around the world and enabled me to help formulate one of the major regulations for Europe on climate change, named the MMR, a few years ago. I work with people to help them formulate strategies, to help them hopefully understand things in new ways, and also to help me understand things in new ways as to how that they can be considered or presented. I would work with colleagues, with individual companies, with groups of companies, with public sector, whether that is a local authority, regional authority, a national government, or a international government such as the EU, but as well as suppliers and customers. in order to form new ways of doing things which have a greater positive influence on, for example, environment, social or governance issues, which is where ESG comes from. ESG really is, I mean, largely it's a financial tool originally, but it depends on how you consider it. All too often, people hear ESG and they immediately think about climate change and believe that's all it is. But ESG is actually fundamentally begins with governance. And so this would be corporate governance in the main, looking at how decisions are made within an organization. And then with that, you may have your values, your ambition as a company, and also a whole range of different ethical issues that would sit upon underneath that, large components of compliance that would sit within this as well. And essentially that provides the bedrock for how an organization would be dealing with environmental and social issues. And those are internal and external. So it could be the whole of your supply chain for both environment and social issues. And it isn't just about climate change. So if you're looking at the environmental concerns. Where do I do? Well, the current role that I'm doing is largely UK focused. However, the supply chain is very much international. And large components of the environmental impacts are in that international supply chain, as are large components of the social impacts, particularly those that are external. This means that you are working with stakeholders in a range of different ways. I mean, I've been fortunate in the sense that I've worked on international basis in the past. But what is very important with these things is to make sure that you are trying to get right what you're doing at home before you necessarily trying to get right everything else that's going on externally. And ideally you need to be doing things at the same time. But all too often there could be a desire to blame others when actually what is taking place here. And we're all familiar with, well, why should we do anything when China isn't? And it's actually, well, carbon leakage is a big component, as are various different other types of environmental things. Why do I do what I do? I guess I want to help make positive change. I'd like to feel some value in what I do on a day-to-day basis. And certainly I enjoy working with other people and hopefully helping to improve lives in whatever way that may actually be.
Thank you very much, Seb. That's really, very interesting. Who'd like to continue? Maiden, do you want to sort of talk about yourself?
Sure.
What you do?
Yes.
Who you are?
Who am I? My name is Maiden Manzanal-Frank. I'm based here in Alberta, Canada. And my background is Filipino. I was born, I was educated and was raised in the Philippines. I moved here in Canada in 2010 and took up a couple of career roles. And now I'm working as the president and CEO of Global Strategist Consulting, which is my own business, my own consulting in terms of my work with on-purpose organizations in Canada and internationally. What do I do? That's one part. I'm consulting on strategy, change, leadership that will improve the conditions of organizations, whether you're nonprofit, your public sector, your social enterprise, your an academic institution around, you know, sustainability impacts, working with marginalized communities, as well as internationally. I work with the World Fair Trade Organization Asia before I moved to Canada. And I was the program manager for a $500,000 budget on business development for micro, small, and medium-sized fair trade enterprises across 15 countries in Asia. So given the extent of my involvement at the global supply chain for fair trade products, I am such in a privileged position to take hold of that in my current role as a consultant and as a CEO of Global Strategist Consulting. I traveled for more than 30 countries, and I have lived in almost 2 continents now. So I have both the northern perspective and the global southern perspective that I weave through in all of my writing, my reading, my teaching, my consulting, my coaching, and my mentoring roles. So I've said that I'm a consultant, but there's just other roles that I play. I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, and I teach at Red Deer Polytechnic. It's a small local university here on strategy, change, and management. I'm also the Rotary Peace Fellow, it's a fellowship program that is organized by the Rotary Foundation International. And I had the privilege of being part of the fellowship program a few years ago. And it's focused on conflict resolution, conflict management, peace, and development. That took me to places such as Nepal and the northern part of Thailand to look at the conflict dynamics and analyze it in various perspectives, such as human rights, gender equality, racial equity, and social justice, poverty, and all these lenses that we use to analyze peace and development, conflict resolution. As a Rotary Peace Fellow, now it turned around. I came full circle. I'm now teaching the Rotary Peace Fellows in the program at Chulalongkorn University. So, and I'm giving them some of the insights that I have in the past few years, almost 20 years in the field of social justice and development and peace and equity, diversity, and inclusion. Put it all together in a way that change makers can understand their role in change making. How do you make changes at the community, at the national level, at the international level, at the regional level, for the work that you do as a Rotary Peace Fellows? And how do you sustain that in a way that is sustainable and enduring, as with the role that you play in the organization, or as a personal advocate or as a personal activism? For your personal activism. So that's the Rotary Peace Fellow. I teach and I mentor with them every year in I think in the past 2 years now. So that's a side of that. I'm also writing. I'm a writer, and I just recently published a book. It's gonna be launched. Sorry for this soft promotion here. It's gonna be launched in July 2022, and it's about individuals are making a change at the individual level. That is person-to-person diplomacy, person-to-person development, without the parachute of larger institutions or a nonprofit or an NGO, guiding them by. So these are really individuals doing the work they can. They're entrepreneurs, they're farmers, they're pharmacologists, these are nurses from all walks of life who have taken the steps to do something in other countries to help them out, to bring them, development ideas, to help them in any way they can. And the book is called Provocateurs, Not Philanthropists, Turning Good Intentions to Global Impact. And a lot of what I do right now is basically the very rationale, not the biggest why I do these things, is because I want to leave a lasting legacy. I want to really build something that I can make a place, a community, a small organization better, more improved, more robust in the context of these ambiguous times that we live in. And why do you do that? Because when I was young in this sector, I'm talking about the development sector, I didn't have a mentor. I was grappling around. I was totally rooted. I'm not rooted in anything. I need this. I'm always discouraged. I was feeling like there's nothing for me as a young person. And I see that in the ecosystem was not capable of actually mentoring young people in the field. We're always begging for funding from funders abroad. We're always being told that no, your job might not be existing in a couple of months. So the organizations and the ecosystem are not capable of nurturing the younger generation, more or less mentoring them individually. So I took it upon myself that when I reach the stage where I can share the benefits of my experience and wisdom and insight, I would like to improve organizations. They're better organizationally. They have more they're more effective, they're able, more robust, and they're able to set the future in terms of economic development, social justice, or whatever sustainability issues they want to tackle on as their purpose, as their goal as an organization. And that's basically my why. I want to give back what I have, I have gathered and achieved in the past 20 years of my professional experience.
Thanks, Maiden. That's wonderful. That's really inspiring. We're moving on to Thierry.
Hello,
Hi, Thierry.
everyone. Hello. Very interesting presentations. I'm happy to meet you. I'm Thierry Roussin. I'm from Canada, actually, but I live in France. I'm based in Paris. I've been based in Paris 20 years now. And I was born in Switzerland. Actually, I'm a citizen of the world, I think. I like to travel and work with many cultures. So that's who am I? What do I do? I founded a company called AguiaLabs about almost 10 years ago now. It's an innovation consultancy to help organizations, mostly big companies, switch their business model for impact. So how do you create meaningful business? How do you create business that does good, for good? Meaning, how do you do business that actually responds to needs, real needs? How do you do business to respond to unaddressed needs and so forth? Okay, so that's what we try to do. I say try. It's easy to say, and it's quite fashionable, but it's quite difficult to achieve. And to do that, we work mostly with big companies. We do work with foundations sometimes with financial institutions. We work a lot in multi-stakeholder environments because, of course, impact cannot be reasoned with just one actor. You have to have everyone on board to do that. And typically, we work on three things. About 50% of the work we do is about changing mindsets. Because it's easy to say we should do this or that in terms of impact, but if you don't have the mindset, it doesn't happen. And I guess that's the biggest challenge we have today, is to help leaders and business people switch mindsets. So I do that 50% of my time. So to do that, it's about thinking value differently. It's about challenging your mindsets. Okay, discovering your mindset. Sometimes we're not even aware that we have belief systems that hinder us. We reconnect people also and leaders to just normal people. Reconnect people to their purpose. All that kind of work is about 50% of our time. And the second thing we do for the rest of the time is experiment different ways of working to innovate. For example, I work a lot in Africa. Right now, I'm driving a disruptive innovation project in 16 countries with young people that actually do things differently and think differently. And the last thing we do, we seed systems change projects that we try to finance. We've been doing that for the past 10 years. The big challenge there is mindsets, but also financing. Okay, so right now we have a big project in Bissau to actually change 80% of the economy of the country by helping growers improve their lifestyle. But that's just an example. So mindset change, experimental innovation or incremental innovation, and then systems change. Those are the kinds of projects we do. We work a lot in Europe, but about 40% of the time, I spend my time in Africa and Middle East. Mostly Africa. That's actually where we innovate or design innovation, and then I export it elsewhere in the world. I also do a lot of pro bono work. So we spend about 10% of our time helping entrepreneurs or people who really want to change the world, just sharing and giving back the experience that I have. And I also teach from time to time. I like to teach and share with young people about how they will change the world too. So that's in a nutshell, that's what we do. And we don't have a specialty. We work on small and big projects. We work across sectors. We're not specialized. We work in many different sectors. And the concept is that this is my third consulting firm that I build. We're non-firm, so we don't have offices and many people. We work with about 200 people in the world that are freelancers or small businesses. And we assemble the best talents for a given project. So that's the model. So it gets the best people in the world to do an innovation project. So that's our model, and it works quite well. All my friends betted that I would go bankrupt 10 years ago doing that, and actually they're wrong. So I think it's a good model, and we have lots of fun because I think there's not a single day that resembles the other, because there's so much to solve, right? Why do I do this? It's a good question, and there are many answers. I have many whys, but one why is about connecting people. I think we have I spend my life seeing a lot of money, a lot of intelligence, a lot of technology, and I'm convinced that we could solve many things, but the problem is people not working or connecting together. And I'm obsessed with that, just bringing people back together to do stuff. That's actually what I do. Forget the diplomas and everything. It's just get people to work together and find solutions. So that's part of my why. And also, we're going to talk about sustainability and justice. I'm convinced, and I've been convinced, and that's why actually I founded my company, that there is a solution to most of the problem we created. So there's no fatality there. And so that's my quest. It's about really getting people to solve those issues. There's no reason we should have the problems we have. So maybe that's a bit optimist or idealist, but that's the way I think. And that's why I founded my company. That's it.
Thank you, Thierry. That's really, very interesting. So let's move on, because you've already actually touched upon some of the things I wanted to ask you. So basically, it's a couple of questions here, of course, with relation to the three key concepts: entrepreneurship, sustainability, and justice. And of course, as an entrepreneurship specialist, I'm aware there are many, many definitions of entrepreneurship. Sustainability, it's the same, but also, of course, there are different ways of defining justice in the academic world, of course. And I explained earlier on that I come from practice. So basically, I'm actually interested in your perception, in your ways of defining these three concepts, and also how they potentially relate to each other. So I think the idea is that we take the two questions together, then each of you has the opportunity to talk about this, and then we move over to how it relates to your business. So let's do this again. So I think Seb kicked off earlier on. So Seb, in terms of definitions of these three concepts and how they relate to each other, what do you think? I can't actually hear.
To me, I guess it depends on the audience as to how you would define these things and what you would want to be going into. I guess, to me, entrepreneurialism is whether you are solution focused or problem focused. And if you are solution focused, you're usually not constrained, and you're trying to find new ways of doing things. And that means approaching the world in a new way, and trying to find solutions where other people find barriers. sustainability, to me, well, I guess my job title is environment, social governance, and sustainability. And realistically, ESG is sustainability to me. So when you combine the three different things, that is what effectively leads you to sustainability. And I would see that within the banner of resilience at the same time, which is an additional word that is used here. And sustainability, though, also has an impact, because you can have business sustainability, which isn't necessarily impacting upon the environment. Then justice, gosh, well, justice has got so many different elements to it, whether that's environmental justice, social justice, natural justice, justice in the terms of what we are all kind of related to. But this also has national, even subnational boundaries and expectations as to what could take place. It has religious implications. It is so multifaceted. It's quite incredible. I think there was I seem to remember a play from when I was doing my school years called Learning Me Your Language. And it's this concept of other people thinking they could come in and tell you how to live your life better in your country or wherever it may be. And the concept of justice, though, can be, because of that nationalization, regionalization, can be different depending on where you are in the world. So I guess, again, with justice, you move into the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, for which justice is forms part of those goals. And that justice is meant to recognize the individual far more.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Seb. Maiden, your views.
So Seb already touched a lot of points in terms of, how do you define this broadly. I'm going to define it in terms of what I do. And I'm located here in Canada. I work internationally. I work here locally as well. So speaking in terms of that, entrepreneurship is really part of not just as a form of occupation or work, but I think about entrepreneurship as being entrepreneurial. So this cuts across many sectors, many organizations, and many bodies or entities. And I think if you want to be sustainable and you want to be just, you want to promote justice and equity, sustainability, racial inclusion, environmental protection, and at the local level, at the grassroots level, at the community level, you have to be more than just more than just doing the usual, doing the business as usual mode. You have to be more entrepreneurial. That is, you have to embrace innovation, embrace failure, embrace the unintended consequences of the actions that you're trying to do, and achieve those in terms of a balanced perspective of many things that will have trade-offs. For me, sustainability is such an organizing framework. In my book, it's a framework where I looked at different sectors doing the same thing: the corporations, the small business mom and pop shop, the nonprofit, the social networks, the movements, the academic institutions. They all have a role to play in sustainability, and that is under the rubric of Sustainable Development Goals. But beyond that, sustainability can be something different from a very small organization trying to survive, from donations to donations, from funding to funding. And to me, it's not just that that out there that we're trying to reach in terms of the ambitious goals for the future, but also right here, right now, what organizations can do to survive. So I believe in organizational sustainability and organizational effectiveness, so they can drive their ambitions forward and onto externally and become the best in their field. And when you look at being entrepreneurial in the context of sustainability and justice, to me, it's all about impact. That's why my book revolves around impact. Impact is such a subjective concept. You talk to somebody and say, my impact is my purpose. Good. My impact is, achieving, achieving zero malnutrition in my community. My impact is, if you talk to a provocateur, the one book that I mentioned a while ago, this person, this psychiatrist is building hospitals in Sierra Leone. And if you ask her about impact, it's all about that. It's all about making a difference in the lives of young people, children, people who have HIV/AIDS, people who are marginalized and poor that the UN doesn't want to work with, you know, have something for them that they can rely on, help themselves, help the people help themselves achieve that in her lifetime. That is impact her. So I think that if you look at, you know, being entrepreneurial, having a sustainability mindset and a perspective, and having an all around, you know, looking at justice cohesively and broadly, that to me is around impact and, you know, not just resilience, but going beyond resilience, making sure that you have, you know, you'll be able to manage the ambiguity, the complexity, and the uncertainty of the future ahead of us, and not just stay on your, you know, on your own strength and existing strength, but really move far beyond fear, beyond doubt, beyond resilience.
Excellent, Maiden. Very, very interesting ideas you bring me up to the table. Thierry?
Wow, what can I add? I'm totally with you, Maiden and Seb, especially on that notion of justice. I was writing notes, and impact is the first word that came to mind. There's something I try to get leaders to think about is redefine what is value. Okay, because for them it's most of the time ROE, EBITDA, and dividends, and I challenge them on that. Okay, what is value? And for me, why are we obsessed with impact today? It's because value is not shared. There's a problem in shared value, okay, or an imbalance. So for me, justice is resharing value, or what should be a shared value. That's one thing, and that ties into the impact concept. Okay. The other thing, justice, is how do you give access to a decent life to every human being. You don't have different types of human being in my brain. We're all very important people. So how do you treat people like that? That's, for me, that's justice too. And today we have a big justice problem, if that's a definition of justice. But it's also, for me, doing good. But again, when Seb, you were talking about different countries, it's very interesting because doing good has a different definition in many parts of the world and in different languages. So what's doing good, you know? So anyways, and justice is a very, you know, it's a huge thing, okay? But for me, those are the shared value, justice about shared value. It's about impact. It's about access to, you know, decent life for everyone. The second one is I'm doing the reverse. Okay, so it's sustainable or sustainability. It's an old word. Sorry, we've been using that word a lot, so that it becomes like, you know, a not impactful word. But it's very, for me, it's how you become regenerative. Okay, how does a system can regenerate the shared value by itself? Okay, but I'm talking about a system, not a company, but a system around a problem. How can it regenerate itself indefinitely? The second notion behind sustainability, again, is impact and relevance. Okay, so I think what is sustainable is responding to real needs. Today, we have a bunch of people responding to false needs or creating needs that are not needs. So how do you switch back to fundamental and meaningful needs and solving those needs? Okay. So for me, that's the second notion of sustainability. And then at the crossroad of that is challenging the growth, challenging our mindset about growth. We've all been educated to say, this company is growing, so it's good. Okay, is it good? How the financial, I'm an ex-finance guy, how the financial theory is based on infinite returns. Okay, so all our system is built on infinite system, and it creates the planet that we have and the issues that we have. Okay, with Elon Musk and all those people. Okay, so I've been involved in many circles about what should be the finance of the future without that infinite capitalization at the end of pricing a financial instrument. Okay, and sustainability is about that too, because all our world is reasoned with financial logic. So right now, whatever we think about is about infinite returns. We need to change that. So that's also part of my definition of sustainability. How do you redefine the way we measure the progress? Okay, which is not necessarily infinite growth. And that's actually why I don't have employees, because I've had many before, nor offices, nor this, nor that. I removed that from my business model. So, and then for entrepreneurship, I won't repeat what Seb said or Maiden, because I'm totally in line with that. I would just add that for me, the first reflex is about entrepreneurship is a mindset. It's an attitude. And what I said before in my purpose is that it's not a fatality that we have the problems we have. We can solve them. Well, to say that, you need to have an entrepreneurial attitude. Yes, we can. An entrepreneur has an intent. An entrepreneur has freedom to act. An entrepreneur likes to fix things or to solve needs. Okay, that's normally people are obsessed with that. So, and an entrepreneur likes to invent solutions that work. And an entrepreneur is someone that tries, falls, and rises again and continues to learn. So to me, it's more about the attitude, and we need that to fix our problems. So it's not about companies. You can be an entrepreneur and sitting at a government, in an NGO or wherever. It's the attitude that counts for me of entrepreneurship. Of course, we could talk about companies, but that my concept goes beyond the enterprises. There you go.
Excellent, Thierry. Very, very interesting. Well, yeah, comments, definitions. How do these concepts, entrepreneurship, sustainability, and justice, actually relate to your business activities? And because some of what you've been saying already relates to that question, I take it a little bit further. And what are the actual challenges that you experience when you're basically trying to bring these sort of mindsets of entrepreneurship, the mindset of sustainability, more just mindsets? When you try to bring all of this into your business activities, you confront the stakeholders, of course, with these novel ideas. And Thierry was just saying, he was talking about making the leaders aware of basically that they need to think differently about growth. And I'm fully in line with that, because growth is not like, yes, return on investment. And I've even written a paper about that came out at the end of 2020, 2021. So I fully agree with all of this. But now the question is, looking at these concepts, your business activities, your own, or in the company where you are, like Seb, what is actually translated? How do you translate these concepts, and what are the challenges you experience? What are the solutions you find, maybe on your own, but maybe also with others, in order to overcome these challenges? Seb, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think that Harry was speaking, I was left to think back to distinguishing between wants and needs. And so quite often with what we're trying to do is meeting needs whilst facilitating wants, and not to conflate those, what we may consider largely in the West as needs or really wants, and that we're not actually having those impacts going as a consequence of the decisions that we make. I guess when people are used to a certain way of doing things, their own paradigm, if we're looking at technology concepts, introducing something new is challenging to them, especially if they're not entrepreneurial, because firstly, people are creatures of habit. So the idea of coming in with something new means that they have to change, and that invariably could signal work. But for some people, it's actually an opportunity to do new things, and for people to actually feel more positive about what they're doing, and how they go about doing it. But with that, it does require a framework or a way of thinking about doing things. I found the Sustainable Development Goals really quite good for this, as it has the 17 different categories, the 17th one being kind of a glue that holds them together, but also all the sub-goals. And it gives people an opportunity to have a structure to link to, regardless of whether it is socially focused, governance focused, or environmentally focused. So the resistance, if there is any, it's usually as a consequence of the organization's history or way of doing things and the way in which it's structured, which goes back to its governance. And that's whether it's a private or a public sector organization. That happens in both sets of situations. And with that, there can be survival issues or fear issues or whichever it may be. And every organization, public or private, I guess you need to, I find myself when I've worked with them either internally or externally as advisor or through partnership arrangements, that you don't know what the other person's experience is or what they're having at home. But certainly in organizations, you need commitment at a high level to facilitate change better. Otherwise, the process takes longer.
That's very interesting, Seb. Thanks for that. Maiden, what do you think?
A while ago, I talked about entrepreneurship, sustainability, and justice. I'm going to locate it now, this three concepts as the soul of the organization, as the soul of the network, or as the soul of a system. I think this is the soul. This is actually what drives, what drives good organizations forward. And in my role as a consultant, I work with individual organizations. I find it that they understand what being entrepreneurial is. They understand sustainability. That's one of their core impact missions, and they're for justice. But the how of doing that is basically, that's the reason why they're so paralyzed, is because they don't understand how to actually locate that within the organization. And in an organizational setting, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of internal factors. There's a lot of obstacles to actually generating that kind of mission, that kind of impact, not just externally, but internally. They have to walk the talk. Most of the time, the CEO and the leader, make some great speeches, but at the end of the day, their workers are angry, tired, and abused. Their stakeholders, their suppliers are not being paid on time. Their board leaders are not capable of moving them to the right direction. These are the issues that are, facing practical issues that are facing organizations today. They want to be the best. They want to be the leader. They want to be the innovator in the field, in their sector. But the how and the day-to-day how of doing that basically paralyzes them. So my role in bringing them to the heart of their to the heart of their existence is basically twofold. going back to their whys, going back to the basics of why they're existing. What's their purpose? What's their vision? What's their mission? What drives them crazy? Not sleeping at night. What are the, what are the big, audacious, hairy goals these leaders have for their organizations? Whether you're a very small micro one, or you're the UN, or whoever you are, maybe you're the big corporate, multinationals in every country in the world. What makes you not sleep at night? What are those big, good goals that you want to achieve in your lifetime, in your organization, when you're there? So that's number one. The second is, how do you bring all the units together so they can actually achieve what they want to achieve? So that's financial sustainability, organizational good governance, stakeholder engagement, being able to really support the workers and their suppliers and their, people that they're dependent on them. All these things make up what we call, achieving change at the organizational level. I'm going to give you an example. One of the things that I noticed that leaders are very wary about committing mistakes. And I think I've told you about that a lot of leadership failures are adaptive failures. A lot of humanitarian failures are adaptive failures. A lot of impact failures are adaptive failures. What I'm saying is all adaptive. Because they're looking at their own existing tools and limitations and obstacles, and they can't see far beyond that. They're paralyzed. They do a lot of analysis paralysis. A lot of consultations, trying to think about solutions, but actually it's not going to help them, because these are all adaptive failures. They're not able to really see the bigger picture, the ways that they can connect things, the ways that they can imagine new things, create new things out of existing problems and issues. And I think what we need to understand is that leaders are just human beings like us. They're governed by, what's in it for me. They're governed by, what's the, projections for the next six months, this overdrive for overperforming, overachieving, and, leaving, dead bodies behind. This is not what we want for our leaders, to take up the next generation of sustainable development goals. We need leaders that are adaptive. They're capable of really getting out of their comfort zone, to question, to challenge some assumptions, and to understand that they need to connect, as what Thierry is saying, they need to connect with the broader community to solve some of these really persistent problems that we face. They say wicked problems, but I don't believe in that. I believe that we can really solve these problems in our generation, in our time, and in our ways and means. And that means generating new ways and new means and new knowledge. I'm going to stop right now, and then others can
Thank you, Maiden. Very, very, very interesting. Thierry, I mean, Maiden already referred to some of your ideas, but now your turn.
I found a new associate, and she's in Canada on top of that. I think we work in similar ways. Okay, I'm not going to repeat, but because I use the same kind of levers. So everything we've been talking about, justice, impact, sustainability, and entrepreneurship, is embedded in what I do every day. That was your yellow question. And I face the same kind of challenges, two types of challenges. And I think it has changed over the past 7-8 years. 7-8 years ago, you would say the word impact. People thought it was a bullet hole. It was a new word, a neologism. Okay, so that's where this changes very fast. Okay, so 7-8 years ago, nobody was talking about impact except Sir Ronald Cohen and the G7 committee and so forth. Today, you have many people who want to create impact. So it's a huge gap between you have three types of people. You have the ones who want to but don't know what they want to build, and that's 100% of the time right now in companies. What is business for impact? Normally, the answer they give me is, "Oh, it's our corporate foundation." Okay, and this no. What would be business for impact? So today, this is brand new. People don't know what it is. So there's a what problem, okay? On top of that, they have a how problem, of course. Why? Because of the mindset. My biggest challenge every day, I think it's what I do. My job is about facing challenge, revealing enduring mindsets, and helping people change their mindset. And that's it. If I would summarize in one, but it's a huge challenge. This is not, we don't teach this at school. We don't have internal charters of beliefs, for instance. We have values, but not mindsets, and beliefs. So I'm talking about the unconscious collective beliefs in an organization that prevent you from doing what you say you would do. Okay, and I think this talks to your example, Maiden. Okay, so right now I work with many leaders in the world. They say we want to create impact. Okay, but their unconscious dictates otherwise. So they will not walk the talk. So my job is to look at them in the eyes and challenge their intention. Have techniques and ways to really be honest with themselves and to discover their real beliefs, okay, without complacency and, in a safe space, of course, because it's shocking when you find out that you say I'm going to save the world, but the real belief is I need to maximize my profit. Okay. How do you, so I reveal that, okay, I have methods for that. And then we work on how we break belief, how we create the right beliefs. Okay, and again, it's not a fatality, it's possible. And creating the right beliefs is about creating or experiencing new experiences or moments that have an emotional impact and that create the right beliefs. So part of my job is to create those experiences where that are going to create or change their beliefs. For instance, ex-coms never see their stakeholders. They don't go in the street. Well, I get them to have meaningful conversation with real people. I know it sounds simple, but try to find 2 hours in a CEO agenda today to do that. For me, it's a condition. I say I do the mandate, or if you do that. If you don't, we're not going to work together. So, I have a bunch of things like that where I create different experiences that really impact them emotionally. And then we can work. So because it opens the chakra and it reconnects people as human beings because they forget they're humans. Okay, so we reconnect with humans. Okay, and have conversations about real needs and things like that. Okay, so I create that. So work on mindsets, work on beliefs, reconnect humans, reflect on purpose, of course. I always ask people, close your eyes, tell me why you go to work in the morning. What do you want to change in the world? And it's very surprising. I don't know with you, Maiden, but most of the time I have people that are 50, 55, 60 in front of me, and they tell me, I've never thought about it, or I haven't thought about it lately. Okay. And we take these things for granted, but if you have a third party like us who challenge that, okay, then it creates an emotion and it creates a boomerang effect that's positive, actually. And after that, of course, once they understand this mechanic of beliefs and how they're created, and then you have to help them walk the talk because they're like kids. They don't know what's the how, what's the right how. So you have to help them change the experience, change the rituals, change the way they work in the company, change the way they work with stakeholders. It actually changes their model, okay? And it's difficult because this is not a one shot. It takes years to do that. Okay, so how do you do that? What I do now more and more, I find early adopters in the company, I train them, call it ambassadors, change makers, whatever. I train them to do differently. Okay, that's another way to start seeding change. And we need 10, 12% of people like that in a big company to really change things. So that's it. But it's a big challenge. today, those are the two big challenges. And also you have in the mindset or beliefs category, the mindset, you have those who are greenwashing. Okay. And so they're not honest. Okay. They don't have the intention of, they're just surfing the wave. Okay. That's difficult also. And, you know, at some point I've been confronted to that. Frankly, I've refused mandates because of that. I've stopped mandates because of that, or else it's my reputation that goes away. So I can give you a list of mandates that I've refused, very attractive things. I'm a businessman, so it's bad for my business to refuse business, but for that reason, you know, incoherence or dishonesty versus intent, or disconnect between, you know, the stated intent and the real intent.
Yeah.
I don't know if all of you have experienced that, but
yeah,
we need to have the courage to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done the same in the past, where you have to basically say, this is, I think, a component of partnerships as well. It's that you are, even from a legal construct, you consider the organization as an entity, as a person. And an organization lives and breathes, and so it has its own identity. And you get that sense, and I would describe as ESG, actually, as the ESG of an organization is its identity and what you're doing within that. And a lot of what you're talking about, I think, is governance. It's information flows. It's how people are talking internally and externally. How do you bring information in? How do you get it to flow around? I think another thing that you're referring to is if you are talking about returns, it's the organization needs to survive in order to keep people employed. It's the degree of profit that may be made within that period of time that becomes a query. And one of the things about assessments that take place for ESG, because it is fundamentally a financial tool, is that a company with a high ESG score may not be making 15% every year. It may be making 6%, but if you put your money in it, you're going to get 6% year on year for the next 20 years, whereas the other company may go under in 2. And so there is a trade-off that takes place. And this is where impact investing may...
exactly. Yes,
yeah. So I certainly had to leave projects before because they were ideologically opposed to things that I was experiencing. And it's your reputation. If somebody's expecting you to work on a project which you know is going to fail, or doing things that you are not comfortable with, then yeah, you certainly I've historically I've had to leave, or say it's not, you know, this isn't the direction for myself. So I do sympathize with that. This is why it's very good and very important if you are coming into an organization to do what you alluded to, which is making sure that leadership has that firm commitment looking ahead, and how they go about doing it really tells you a lot. And whether or not, you know, greenwashing can be a very wide term. So no, I concur with what you're saying entirely.
Well, it's about walking the talk. I mean, you cannot tell others to walk the talk if you don't walk the talk on this.
Yes. Yeah.
And for me, what I found out, Seb, is whenever I say no, it's replaced by good. I never lost business because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you refuse something that is not in phase with the kind of values that we're talking about, it makes room for more mandates and more activities and more projects that are aligned with those values and with this intent.
Absolutely.
But it's you see, it's a mindset, because normally we don't want to lose things, but here we're refusing things to give room to really to give room to honesty and give room to many genuine projects and genuine intent. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it goes back to one of the earlier questions, isn't it? What motivates you?
Yeah.
So, and if you're motivated by helping improve situations, then doing something which you think will be destructive is opposed to that, and that's fundamentally opposed to an entrepreneurial mindset. If it is in the environment, social governance field. So, yeah.
But it takes courage. Also, you talk about the money, okay, with the returns. I personally put my money in meaningful companies, or I make sure that whatever I place is not okay. But it takes some courage for some people to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, because maybe 6% is okay, not 15. But remember what I said before. I'm an ex-finance. The cost of capital, okay, requires you to make 19% pre-tax or after tax on equity because of infinite return, the infinite return factor. So maybe you have people like us today. We're going to be called crazy people who shouldn't mind making 6% or 5% because actually it doesn't matter. It becomes irrelevant when you remove the infinite sign.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's other criteria, qualitative criteria. Okay, so that's a tough one. 5 years ago, I was thrown out of a board meeting because I was saying that. People refuse to hear that, but it's true. It's the truth. Okay, so it takes courage to say, okay, I'm okay with 6%.
Yeah.
And I'll tell that to my investors. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's fantastic. But I mean, the 6%, that reminds me, I was actually in Japan a couple of years ago, and basically in Nagoya, but also in Tokyo. And I was I was very welcomed by a very big company, but I was also working with small companies over there. And one of the arguments of one of the SMEs was actually this: why should I be making 300% but surrounded with very unhappy employees when I maybe just make 10%, but I benefit my community and my employees are much happier, and I am happy in myself,
There
he
you
said.
go.
And I've also, like you, Thierry, I've said that at different places and different events and different circumstances, and people look at me like, is she completely nuts now? Is she crazy?
Yeah,
That sort of thing. And then I wrote this article and did this research in Helsinki, working with different entrepreneurial people ranging from MBAs to SMEs. And basically I found a lot actually of what I'd found in Japan reflected in the opinions and the attitudes of the people in Finland. And it was this well-being factor for them as an entrepreneur, the well-being they created for their communities, for the employees. I found like this is something we rarely talk about, this questioning of how much growth do we really need to have this well-being, this happiness in us. Yeah. Because I mean, a lot of people, when I look at you, I find you very intrinsically motivated. It's very important for you what you do in certain contexts, but also with a certain ethical dimension. And I mean, what I pick up is also you've had a lot of courage in many instances to walk out of projects because the ethics, the values are not those which you stand for and which are also inherent in your reputation. But it takes something to do that. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it?
Intent, genuine intent. And to Maiden's point about the how, that's the first thing when I meet a CEO, we have 3-hour discussion, I will challenge his intent. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that the intent, the right intent is there. Intent or intention, I don't know what to say, but the intention of the person for me is pristine. it's just a matter of volonté in French, volonté, will.
Well, willingness.
Willingness. It's about willingness. That's it. It's very easy to find after 5, 10, 15 minutes, half an hour of discussion, if someone is really willing to do this or not. Okay, I can be very challenging about that. And it's easy to find. It's easy to find out to what level a person is willing or not to walk the talk, as Maiden was pointing out, because that's it, and it comes to that.
Yeah.
People, there's nothing, there are no fatalities in the world. It's people who take decisions or behave in such and such a way. So if you don't walk the talk, or if you don't have the real intent to do things, you're not going to do things. Okay, so I work a lot on intent and purpose, not because it's fashionable, but it's the driver.
Yes.
It starts with the purpose, the personal, the individual purpose. And, it's like anything in life. It's like losing weight. It's like stopping smoking or whatever. What's your intention? Are you willing to do this? And it's okay to say no, but don't lie to yourself. And that's what I tell my clients. So I work a lot on that upstream, on the intent, the conviction.
Very, very interesting. I've gone through all my questions now. I'd like to open basically the floor to other participants in this call. And I don't know whether Jorge, you've been looking at the chat, and have people had questions already?
No questions. We had a few comments, but no questions. So if I'm inviting as well all the attendees, if you do have any questions, if you want to open the mic, and then I'll check the order for the second or third question. Do we have any questions? Anyone to start, or any comment? I have comments myself, but yeah, I like to first of all give the opportunity.
Yeah.
We have Katerina. Yeah, Katerina, you may pose the question. I'm happy to read if you don't want to
Yes. Hi. I just wanted to see again the questions, Jorge, the main questions of the roundtable.
Rita, can you go back one slide? Yes, Katerina. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
There you are.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to the conversation. Of course, I have different experiences from leading several PGRs, DBAs and PhDs who do research, very applied research in these areas, and also having worked previously in practitioner roles myself with companies in CSR, program management, strategic planning, etc. I do wonder whether this is a more general observation. We are really looping into the generations that are coming, because sometimes the way that we see some of these concepts are really not only from our perspective, but also from the perspective of the previous generations, because we had to interact, with, for lack of a better word, we might want to call the previous generation baby boomer generation or whatever. But I think there is a kind of an intergenerational dialogue here that needs to go beyond the banal aspect of such an idea. It needs to be of essence. Because some of these things that we really need to bring into the organizations, the mindset, the values, the beliefs, it could be that they are not there yet in our current reality, just because they are written into the future, and perhaps younger generations have already adopted them or not. So what I want to add to this conversation, this roundtable today, is this aspect. How can we really integrate that? Because in a kind of a corporate setup or even a university setup, we don't really hear this voice so much. And there might be that there is novelty coming from the future, the way that, they are thinking and they are, understanding the world, that we are losing just because we are still in the reactionary mode to the previous generation. And don't mind me calling one generation one label or another. I'm just using common parlance, common use of terms, etc. So that's the point that stood out for me in terms of this conversation. Any feedback, any discussion points would be really interesting.
It's an interesting point. I'll step in here quickly because I used to work in Utrecht at the Copernicus Institute for Sustainability, and we had a very successful BSc in Global Sustainability Science. So I was involved in the recruitment process for this BSc, and the young people, they had to write statements about why they wanted to join that program. That was one of the key questions. So analyzing 200 of them, it really struck me that they all wanted to change the world. They all wanted to sort of, bring change in every circumstances of their professional, but also private, personal life. And one of the things was also that it raised then questions to me about whether we are actually doing justice to these young generations that are so enthusiastic about bringing change in every way of their lives, also in particular the professional that I had mentioned. Are we actually really doing justice? Are we integrating their concerns, like Catherine is just basically questioning? Or are we actually not engaging in this intergenerational dialogue? I mean, I felt very privileged in a way that I was reading their statements, and it gave me a lot of actually hope that we can bring some change overall, not because they were coming from different countries, they were not just Dutch. So I was thinking, wow, if this is sort of like an international sort of movement inside these young people, I thought, wow, we can do something together. But obviously it is challenging. But I mean, it's when you were saying that, Catherine, I think I felt that there's something for me in there that needs to be tackled.
I think I can.
I thought it makes sense. Go ahead.
But no, I agree. In fact, in our organization, based upon internal group, we're going to be delivering a suite of services which are fitting under the banner called liaise. So we actually trademarked the word liaise in an IT context, and that is linked to social, circular is truly social IT as a service. And the very fundamental component of that is to get people talking, and that's across all generations in order to understand what the impact would be, whether that is UK or internationally based. Because there is different ways of thinking, and there is very different expectations of what people's wants and needs are in that regard, and also what people from a social perspective and an internal perspective would want from an organization that they're part of at the same time. So that engagement across various different ways is actually a key component of what we're currently doing, and that kind of engagement is things which the stakeholder engagement is something that I have done, I think, for about 18 years, probably going back to 2004, 2005. So yeah.
If you have any best practices to share or methods for this engagement, for example, it could be facilitated dialogues or any specific methodologies, please share with us.
I have to be honest that when I've done it, it has been thinking on my feet so often. I've been very fortunate to have worked internationally. So I would have the situation structured with whisper translation, and trying to understand people's body language. There are just so many, for me personally, there's so many different parts of it. But a major thing which we try to provide training to staff is to get people to understand that the most important component of communication is listening, and observing the other people that are in the room, to know who isn't talking, to know who may be thinking something different, and to try and work out ways of bringing that information out of people and understanding that some people can't talk. I mean, you've got 3 speakers here who aren't scared of talking, but there are other people that have very good ideas who are far more timid. And there are plenty of people who are entrepreneurial at heart, but just have never been given the freedom to do it. And to try and encourage people to have that freedom can be a really important thing within an organization, in private or public sector. That would be as well.
And if I may add something, from my own experience, Katerina, university, what I tend to do, enable channels. I've been working with the deaf community for more than 10 years, just to put an example. And although I work for the university and we have internal statistics, I don't really follow the statistics. I don't trust them because I know most of my students don't complete them, or they try to be very nice depending on their cultural background. So what I tend to do, different channels. What do I mean by that? From languages to methodology. I've used, with their permission, things like Snapchat. Although I'm older, I was asking them to teach me how to use it in order to enable a new channel. Or if I'm, working with someone deaf or someone blind. So again, to me, has to do with not only relying on what institution is being offered, but as well targeting my audience. In that sense, a smaller community, 20 students, or a larger community, more than 300 students. It does create problems with innovation, institutionally talking. That's another issue, but I'm willing to pay the price if it makes sense. I don't want to take too much time because we have another question, but I think Maiden wanted to say something as well. Maiden?
I've thought about that because when I was writing a book, I thought about the future and the millennials and our existing generation, and we need to have more dialogues, more engagement, and we need to hear more voices that we're not hearing. That are not present in our board meetings, that are not present in many of the things that we do. We need to seek them out. We need to proactively seek them out. I was thinking about the lines of mentoring again and sponsoring internally in organizations and in communities. We need to redefine the future of school and education and extracurricular activities. If the passion of an individual is community development, what do we have for her? What do we have for him in terms of that? Can they work with farmers? Can they work with fisher folks? Can we teach them how to do flood mitigation control where in areas where there's nothing but really their ability to survive and thrive in very difficult situations? Can we bring them those kinds of experiences that will enable them to really define who they are as advocates, as activists, as community leaders, as transformational leaders? So we really need to define them broadly, not just in our own little, mini organization, but what actually they do outside and what kind of capacities we can build for them. These are I would call creative, sessions, creative dialogues, creative, innovative projects, simulations, all these things that they can really bring their passions to bear and expand their view about what the world is and what they can do with this world and what can they actually how their skills and knowledge and their passions can be brought to bear in the realities of the world. And I think we can do better than that. We can do better than what we're doing right now. And the third is looking at this as not sort of us versus the millennials or millennials versus the next future generation, but together as a whole, intergenerational, bring together the sort of things that we know as wisdom and we know as facts, right? So we need to really bring our sense-making abilities. All those who have, the older people can bring a wealth of information, a wealth of wisdom, but the younger people can bring the passion, the boldness, the entrepreneurial abilities, the questioning that we need so that we can come up with a better future ahead of us. And I think that in terms of that, we need to create new spaces for people to tinker and tamper and to make failures as conscious efforts, not just because we need to embrace it and access our ignorance in many of the things that we do, both from the side of those who are, are leading now and leading in the future.
Yeah, I think this reminds me of something you referred to earlier, which was, I think you call it DEI. I mean, so whether it's, depending on what side of the Atlantic you're on, it's either DEI or EDI. So with the E being equity or equality. I do think that diversity, equity, equality and inclusion is a really key issue or a key area in which could help to drive understanding and help to form and change cultures in a whole range of different organizations and opening up new ways of doing things at the same time.
Rita, we have Alexander. We have another question or comment here.
I'm just, I'm conscious of the time. Is everybody okay for staying in the call? I mean, of course, if you have other commitments, you're free to leave. I mean, it's a very interesting discussion, so I don't want to cut anybody off. But I'd like to point out that it is 5:30, over 5:30 in the UK, and in other places it may be later in the day. So I'm just pointing that out.
Again, I think it's Alexander Mismuko.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I just wanted to say that I myself from, I'm 26 and I'm from Zambia. I work in the Office of the Vice President on issues to deal with climate change and disaster risk financing. And I just want to be quick to mention that I earlier on, my background is really around business. I come from a business background, an MBA in strategy, and I lead ASAP ESA, Academic Stand Against Poverty, East and Southern Africa. And also maybe just to mention that earlier on, just right after graduating from undergrad, I was leading the youth wing of the ruling party of the government here in Zambia. A few months before I resigned to join the private sector and now into government. And I just wanted to say that I, in so many ways, relate to a number of issues that you've talked about. And I think one of the key things that I think is being able to bring, policymakers, people that, deal with these issues, and also you people, academics, in one room and being able to discuss this. And I'm saying this because one of the things that I've been particularly very interested about is issues around, for example, taxation, expropriation of capital within the mining sector, which is, from where I'm coming from, is really a huge issue. And I remember I led, an effort to bring together policymakers and all, which was attended by the vice president and academics. And I think there's real value in, being able to just, have these kind of discussions together with people that actually, make these decisions as opposed to having, side, conversations. And because that way you are able to actually, not only bring the solutions, but ensure that those solutions are put into effect, into impact. You're able to have the impact that you have. And so I'm just trying to say that this is very exciting and also very interesting to note. And on a side note, also to say that if you need young people to mentor, I'm happy to I'll be really excited to work on some of this talk on Thierry as well as Maiden. Otherwise, thank you so much for for having these discussions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, if there are no more questions, Jorge, did you want to summarize quickly this afternoon?
You're muted.
Okay.
Hello, is it working? Is it sharing?
It is sharing,
Good.
not as one big slide, but we can see. Yeah.
There we are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, I've been trying to highlight the ones that have commonalities, because we can see from Seb, Maiden, and Thierry, several issues from. I mean, in particular, because I'm from Argentina, something that Maiden distinguishes between Northern and Global South. Because it is a reality. Although we have people from all over the world today, there is a real issue between the aspirations and the real means in order to make those aspirations effective. But again, just to put that example, because Seb as well referred to stakeholders in particular, or Thierry mentioned citizens of the world, and I think that's one of the reasons we are all citizens of the world in this meeting today. So again, you see several points, but what I did is I highlighted the ones that I see commonalities. The main one being, all three speakers and probably all the audience today has to do with innovation. We are trying to, and all three speakers are trying to bring a change. And the first one mentioned in this was Seb, to try to be a positive change. And I was thinking about myself as well when I was younger. Maiden mentioned this in a different way, to give back, to mentor people in that way, and I would add to invest in people, because at the end of the day, we are a product of our own self-investment. So in that sense, I think we are reinvesting back in our societies. One thing I like to bring together, because Seb, Thierry, and Maiden mentioned, is bringing change, but something that Maiden highlighted in particular, lasting change. Not only change now, not only change for our community, but why not to think about future generations. So in that sense, lasting change, I think, has to be something key. Now, talking about the three concepts, entrepreneur, sustainability, and justice, they all agree. They depend on the situation, they depend on the time, they depend on people or stakeholders. So they are very vague concepts. However, they did have some agreement in terms of two things to me, regardless of innovation, because I already referred to innovation, whether we focus on the problem or the solution. And all three, I don't think this is a coincidence, they were discussing mainly the solution. One of them that we had with academic stand against poverty and roundtables we had in 2020 when the pandemic started, not only to have rights and obligations, but to give access to people to exercise those rights. And once again, I remember back in 2020, Seb was one of our presenters as well. We were talking about washing in Brazil, this foundation I represent, or charity. We were talking about, washing our hands and so on. And we discussed a simple example. People don't have access to clean water and access to soap, let alone, other issues. So again, it's not only about having the right, but giving access. And one thing that all three agree as well, regardless of the different terminology they use, the mindset or attitude that define us individually and the organizations we are part of, if we are lucky. Because there seems to be a dichotomy between individual entrepreneurs and organizations becoming still. And that brings me to the challenges. Again, the key, innovations, entrepreneurs, sustainability to bring change. The problem, all three, once again, there seems to be a sort of disconnect between vision and mission and the how to do it, how to achieve that. And once again, all three have to do with the agreement on changing mindset, changing belief. What I will say, to me, what I've noticed, and probably after we finish the meeting today, very inspirational. However, I still have a big question because I work for a corporation or a university, and I try my very best to innovate. I'm a sort of academic revolutionary back in Argentina and here in the UK. And I don't mind saying that. I tend to get on with students, not with institutions. Regardless of their age, regardless of their different abilities, because I don't talk about disability. We are all differently able. However, that brings me problem institutionally, because you are disruptive. I'm not saying everything I do is right. However, I'm more than happy to attempt, to try a change, to innovate. And I buy Maiden's idea of being a provocateur and giving back, because to me it's essential we be back to our society, especially coming from the Philippines or coming from Africa, or coming from Latin America. If we have such a place like to live in Canada or to live in the UK, to give back to our societies. But there is a problem. We are part of, individually, mainly I'm talking about financial resources. We may not have the financial resources to bring that change, maybe one-to-one, but not larger. But then the price we have to pay is to work for institutions that may have, at least all our institutions in the UK have the vision, and it's probably the web page, the first part, vision and mission. They don't happen to read them. Our deans, our head of department, they don't happen to read the first page of our website. And that creates quite a few problems. So my question back to you, I buy all three speeches. I'm into, innovation, I'm into changes, I'm into being proven wrong in order to improve, because that's how we evolve. Is at all possible to change mindset institutionally, not only individually, institutionally, or the only way out is to resign and to keep on doing our things individually as we do? And that's why we created Juris North, because we didn't know Jorge Núñez was not going to be able, or Veronica, a Venezuelan lady, now professor in Surrey, was not going on her own to be able to bring change. We decided to cut across universities, and that's how we started Juris North, by bringing a platform together of people that wanted to bring a change to the British academia. So again, that might probably sum up Rita, and my question to all three speakers: what do we do? Can we change institutionally, or we have to keep on fighting individually?
Good question, Jorge. Any answers?
Yeah, absolutely. You can change an individual, you can change an institution. It is, I think the environmental term is getting a critical mass. Thierry, I believe, was referring to this as well,
yes.
Of how do you bring about change in an organization? And it very much depends of the organization. I've been fortunate enough to work in academia. Well, I don't know. Is it fortunate to work in academia? But work in academia, work in NGOs, or work in the public sector as well as the private sector. And they all have very different ways of being, and different expectations, and very different change management models that you would do. And universities, particularly the larger ones, have got a lot of challenges with doing things like that. The public sector, this goes into an earlier question of justice, and that is significantly different around the world, and how that's interpreted, as many of our speakers know who are truly international. But for private organizations, again, Thierry referred to it as well, with talking to C-level, seeing that there is a culture for change there, or an outlet, because that can really help drive change. Building it from the ground up is far harder, but eventually it wins through. But the question before from Catherine about what really goes into intergenerational fairness and listening to different audiences, to the ones that we've primarily been exposed to, that acceptance, and that goes back into equality, I believe, can help facilitate change. And that is more eye-opening, of realizing who you need to speak to and listen to. So yes, but I just think it's very defined depending on those four. I think, am I right in saying that those are the four key areas of activity: academia, NGOs, government, and industry. Industry including business. Yeah.
I do agree with you, Seb. You know, you have to take the leadership of your thoughts. So at some point, you either can embark and convince people, or you go elsewhere. Number two, of course, if C-suite doesn't embark, you'll have big problems. You know, I've even been given mandates by C-suite who are not honest and crushed people that I mobilized inside. So it's very important that the change come from the top in an organization. You know, that's for me. That's and then there's a rule. I know it's bullshit, but the 12% rule, it always works, even when I try it. The tipping point. There's always people in an organization. Sometimes they don't talk a lot, okay, but they're like you. If you find those people, you can actually accelerate change. So for me, it's a combination of three things. It's you as a person. If you're in an organization, wherever you are, in the government, in an NGO, or you need the bosses to embark, or at least to give you the mandate or to give you a space, experimentation space. That's what I negotiate. Just give me a space, an untouchable space to, and then find the change makers so that you're not alone. Or else it's very difficult. It's very difficult, and the risk is that you lose your energy, because you're like viruses. You know, if you're in an organization where you have different beliefs, the system tends to eject you. And if you stay there, you will destroy yourself. Okay? You cannot change systems like that. So be careful about that. I mean, you know, there's a limit to personal energy. And personally, that's what I did. I was in a toxic partnership before, and I just moved out. And I left everything. I left a lot of money on the table because it was attacking me even physically. You know, so I decided to just, you know, move out. You cannot change from inside. So, but it's one and the other. You know, one and. So you need the decision makers, at least to embark or test some things, experiment new things.
Yeah,
find colleagues.
Yeah.
I think also from a university perspective, you can create your own organization, which is effectively what you've done. And that is actually we're doing it, is to create your own organizations. Like you can almost live in a perpetual project if you're to take a project management definition of it being a temporary organization. But if you have a Juris North network and you're able to interact with each other and deliver things, which you do your teaching and you do your research separately, and you did it through a virtual organization, if you will,
Yeah.
then that's innovating, I think, because you could see multiple other people going, well, I like doing that, and we can do that as well. And you know, I think the university sector, it goes through waves, and as to whether it's research focused or teaching focused, and we're very much still in the teaching focused phase at the moment in the UK. So yeah, I think that's a challenge. Sorry,
Jorge, if you're going to ask me if you should leave or you should stay and fight, this is not a zero-sum game. You can do both. You don't have to leave necessarily, ahead of your time, but you don't have to fight out and die in the process. So I'm going to say, as a revolutionary, as a provocateur, you create your new channels where you can channel your passions, your practice, your skill set, your wisdom to other creative means. That's your healthy channel. So what you do inside the organization is, number one, pick the lowest hanging fruit where change is inevitable, it's supported, and it's encouraged. Number two, find allies, like Thierry said, find allies and mentors that you can build energy from and make some synergy. And number three, change doesn't have to start from the top. It can start at the bottom. It can start in the middle. So make sure that you ally in the right places and create those spaces and pockets for cooperation and creative alliances. That will do you good. And number 4, be healthy. Take care of yourself. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So maybe chipping until you can create a big sculpture of work of art. It starts with the small chips. So create those chips along the way and always be healthy, always take care of yourself, and monetize the other things that you do in terms of your business or your other things that you want to do in your life. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all. And that's how we started with Rita. We met 2 years ago. At the time, I was doing a conference. It was supposed to be face-to-face with Russian colleagues. It's funny we talk about Russia, but with Russian colleagues. It was a Russia-UK second symposium. The first one 2016, the second one 2020. It didn't happen face-to-face. We decided with ASAP, Academic Stand Against Poverty, not to cancel, and we ran online because I had to teach myself. That's how I met Rita, because she wanted to do something similar, and that's how we had this synergy. It's been 2 years now with Rita. And this is a safe haven, Juris North, for many people. That's why the next step would be, you know, what Maiden said and Thierry, you know, to make it sustainable, so financially stable. So that would be the aspiration in the future, yes. Because what we try to offer is equal footing. We don't have professors, we don't have students. We are all entitled to have an opinion and to have a discussion. If not, we tend to have like this without talking about different universities, because some of them are very, very good. We have this kind of vertical ranking in the sense, depending on who you are or the number of degrees you have, you may be entitled to a stronger opinion. So that's what we've been trying to do, you know, since the start. So thank you very much. And Rita, I don't know if you want to as well say something.
I just want to say thank you, that basically I could sort of have, but we could have these fantastic speakers in this call who were contributing with this amazing experience. And I mean, I hope, but definitely I've enjoyed these conversations, and I hope the audience has. And I hope we can stay in touch. And I mean, I've been thinking, Jorge, with the Juris North platform, I mean, I've basically actually share the idea of Maiden. And Jorge, we've had conversations about it as well, to monetize certain things. But I also wonder whether basically Juris North could be a platform also basically for saying these experts exist with these competences, skills, and expertise. And then basically, because the network is 2,000 people, my network is also global, as you know, combining all of this, maybe there's an opportunity to say these are the experts who are here. They may work in collaboration or individually, but say that's what is available to work with for basically the public sector, the private sector, whoever else needs expertise. Okay, so with these last words, I basically thank everybody for being here this afternoon. And it's been fantastic having you, and thank you very much again.